Alright, I'm a couple months into Godot, and now that I'm no longer installing a new operating system, nor working on that LSP episode, which really took a lot of grind setting to make, but still not nearly as monumental as the Quaternions episode, I can finally talk about my own game development again. So without further ado, devlog number 25. So last time, after complaining for most of the video, I said I was making a move-in shooter, and surprise surprise, I still am. So what do I got? Honestly, not much. While I'm comfortable-ish with GDScript, I'm still learning the ins and outs of Godot. Adding a method track to imported animations? Gotta Google that. Particle systems? Need to read up on those. Procedurally generated meshes? Time to hit the docs. See, this is probably the best reason why I think knowing math for game dev is so useful. The kinematic equations are always going to be the same regardless of engine or language. So while I may have to spend time learning new engine-specific features when it comes to, say, setting up a player character controller, after I learn how to actually move something, I can implement that in anything. And speaking of character controller, I got one. Of course I do. I'm basically cribbing notes off of Sick Transit, and I won't have the gravity spinning mechanic of Bhava Sutra, so it's all a little simpler. Just had to change my C++ code into GDScript. Very simple. As you can see, I got good old wall running back, but currently no sliding. I implemented it and tested it out a bit, but I took it out. I'm a little worried that after I add weapons and enemies, it's just gonna be a little too much, but I may add it back in a different form, and since I already have it all set up, hey, that'll be easy. And yes, wow, very exciting level. Hey, I just needed something basic that I could set up fast that lets me test things out. And if the slide mechanic does come back, it'll return in the form of movement abilities. So far I've implemented two, aside from slide, my true love, the grapple, and also a quote-unquote rewind mechanic. I've got notes for more planned along with the returning slide, but so far I'm not implementing any more and moving on to other aspects of the game. Now, why aren't I implementing all of them first? Since I'm flying solo, I like to pick out the things that I think will be the most challenging and also kind of lay out the problem space the most. What do I mean by a problem space? Well, let's look at some of the abilities I have planned and why I chose the grapple and rewind first for implementation. For the grapple, I had to set up something that allows me to add additional velocity to the player controller and procedurally create a mesh and set up basic ability cooldown boilerplate stuff. So now I can create a super jump, low or anti-gravity state, or reintroduce the power slide movement. All hopefully fairly easily since those follow a similar idea. Do additional movement calculations and then add that velocity to the player controller. Then for the rewind ability, I can do a phase and teleport abilities, all of which I have planned so far. And by implementing these two, I've basically found the extremes of the player movement abilities, and I can just sort of copy the implementations for all the other abilities from these. So now I'm doing the same thing, but for weapons. Right now, I've mostly implemented this Gatling gun. Don't get used to the model. This is a CC BY Gatling gun that Magic Bean from Sketchfab made, and it won't be included in any download. I just rigged it up real simply to make the barrel spin so I could test that out. What can I say? I'm blitzing through stuff to see how things work in Godot. I chose to make the Gatling gun first because it has a spinny barrel, which is procedural animation, a heat system, and a magazine system, recoil, tracers, impact particles, and firing particles. So when you put that all together, it checks off a lot of features for weapons that I plan to add. It's a full auto hit scan weapon, so I figured to actually engage your brain cells, the heat is there to serve as something else to manage while using it. This is the good old strive method of balance. Want to make something more engaging?
And a bar. And give her a bar. Give them a bar. Give him a bar. And he fights with a bar.
Just add another bar. I'm also going to set up two more weapons before I move on to the next aspect that I need to implement. A weapon that uses projectiles inspired by the good old Titanfall Thunderbolt, and a melee weapon that I figure will properly bound the weapon problem space along with the hitscan Gatling gun. So I'm gonna continue on my feature problem space bounding blitz, and I will say, it stops me from overstructuring my code before I implement anything in game. Now some of you will say, John, you're the big brain math man. If you have weapons, you can clearly see you're gonna need some shared behaviors between all of them. Why not start off by writing a superclass that they can all inherit from? And to this I say, first off, I'm a composition Chad. And second, this might just be a me thing, but whenever I preemptively create architecture and inheritance, it ends up boxing me in. Only after I write something out 3 or 4 times will I set up a design pattern to help me not repeat myself so much. While I adore my copy of design patterns and I have it on my desk so I can browse its hollowed pages if I ever need some spiritual guidance, I try to focus on the actual problems first and then worry about architecture. The other way around just seems kind of like putting the cart before the horse. But I will just, inject dependencies at the drop of a hat. That does not count. So, of course, after the weapons, I have to set up stuff that can be damaged, such as the environment and enemies. And then after that, I have to actually set up enemies, etc., etc., etc. A lot of stuff to do, and while I've stuck to only GDScript for now, I can already see something that I'll probably have to implement in my beloved C++. Honestly, for the rewindability, I tried out an array of lambdas for a hot second there, and wow, that absolutely murdered frame rate. Even with the better setup that I'm using now, I still might end up re-implementing it in sepals. But for now, I'm just focusing on putting one step in front of the other and not worrying about things further down the line. And speaking of things further down the line, I of course have some other stuff planned out, but I'll talk about it when I get to it. Some stuff that I've never done before, but I'm really just excited to learn how to implement and tell all of you about it afterwards. And that's it for this episode. If you're watching this shortly after it comes out, there's going to be a total eclipse in Texas on April 8th, 2024. So if you live close by, you have family or friends in the area that'll take care of you, or you can afford a trip to check it out, you should go. I've only seen a few partial eclipses in person, but I hear total eclipses are like super surreal. Like all the birds and stuff go quiet. Just very odd. But alright, enough eclipse PSA. As always, thank you for watching. I appreciate your time and I hope you have a good day. If you liked the video, please give it a like, and if you want to continue along with whatever's coming out next, please subscribe. I'm basically out of ideas for Gamedev math videos, so if there are any topics you'd like me to cover, just let me know, because if I don't get any suggestions, I'll probably just end up making another devlog. Also, feel free to comment. Great way to suggest a math topic you want me to cover. I read all the comments I get and try my best to respond to all of them. Sometimes the YouTube studio is a little goofy and it doesn't show the new comments all the time, so if I don't end up replying to you, it's nothing personal. I'm also on the site www.twitter.com, and I post about swapping my caps lock and escape key, which is an absolute game changer, by the way. There's also a Discord server, which is a great place to post Eclipse photos and stories, since I won't be going myself and I want to vicariously experience it through someone that does. Check the video description for links to both the server and my Twitter account. Now, aside from Eclipse photos, I welcome a bunch of other things. You can talk about game dev, math, and baking. And speaking of baking, let's get to it. And here we got bagels. Now, I used to think that ciabatta was my white whale, but really, in retrospect, bagels. I did not know how hard bagels were. As you can see, I got some 3 nice looking ones at the top, but the rest of these look like trash, and they even got a little discolored because I proofed them on just a baking tray, and it's pretty like old baking tray, so it's just some oxidation. It tastes fine, but honestly, so yeah, these were, oh my god, bagels so rough, and so and here we can take a look inside. So yeah, it's got an okay crumb structure, and honestly, these bagels were tiny, which was another problem. And from if you've been watching since ciabatta, I cannot take an L. I have to go back in there, do better. That's who I am. So I made bagels again. And here you can see, here's a rare picture of things unbaked. And even now, just from this picture, the bagels already look better. And they're much bigger too, because I only made 6 instead of like, a dozen or so. So, and plus, I'm doing this, I've tried to do this the traditional way, where like you first start out, instead of like poking a hole in the bagel, you like make a long snake and then you roll it up and you spin it all together, because that's supposed to get a better rise on the bagel, and I think it does. But so let's take a look at this second attempt. And yeah, this came out much better. So I think I redeemed myself with this batch of bagels. We still got a couple odd-shaped ones, but the rest of them looking good. They're looking good. And if I have another picture here, as you look inside, yeah, pretty good crumb structure. But so there's a few more times where I try making bagel, but I've come to the conclusions that bagels, you're better off buying bagels. Bread, I think, yeah, you make them bread. Bagels, unless you're making a bunch of bagels, which honestly you just can't do unless you're in a bakery. You just don't got enough oven size, and you don't have a big enough mixing bowl. Bagels are tough. They're a lot of work, and just buy bagels. If you want bagels, buy them from a bakery. That's my takeaway. Bagels, they're good fresh. I don't know. Yeah, they might not be enough juice for the squeeze, though. That's my thoughts on bagels. But when they come out good, those 6 bagels, you're like, ooh, this was the best decision of my life. But after that, you're like, man, that was a lot of work. Honestly, bagels, harder than macarons. Yeah, harder than easy. These are the hardest things I've ever done. And spoiler alert, I don't really ever get good at making bagels. And I've tried a couple more times, but honestly, it's just, they're tough. They're tough. Buy your own bagels. And I'm going to use the classic sign off. And there is yeast in this. I don't think I used my starter, but there is yeast, all right. But anyways, the yeast in the air is free. Go out there and bake. Baked goods make great gifts, and they're delicious, they're nutritious, they're good for you, home baked specifically. And they're a great way of showing people that you appreciate them, and I appreciate all of you. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.